Welcome, everyone. We'll get started with the Legislative Program Committee for March 2nd, 2026. Thanks all. Supervisors, CAPS department are here with us this morning. And we'll begin with a public comment for items that are not on the agenda. We have one written comment that's been submitted, which will be posted online. There are also hard copies in the room if anybody would like that. Anybody else online, Kathy? Nope. Right. Then we'll proceed with minutes from the February 2nd meeting.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah. Anna passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to number 3, we'll have our federal update. Don Gilchrist.
It's already obsolete.
Well, good morning. So the agenda in Congress is a little bit shaken up this week because of the attacks on Iran. That has kind of pushed itself to the top of the pile, and Congress is going to be spending some time on war powers issues. Democratic members are wanting to have much more detailed briefings on what's going on, and they will be pushing for votes in both the House and the Senate for resolutions that would restrain President Trump's attacks on Iran. And there may be some crossover votes from Republicans. That seems unlikely to be much of a factor, but it'll be a difficult week with a lot of energy focused on that. And we're also experiencing a complicated situation because we still have a partial government shutdown with we have not finished up the Homeland Security Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2026. That doesn't seem to be moving closer to resolution. There's a lot of stories about proposals and counter proposals, but a lot of that has moved out of the public view and is happening behind closed doors. I do think we are going to see that start to move towards a resolution soon. The math on it is that the Republicans need to have 8 to 10 Senate Democrats be willing to support moving ahead. But whatever they do to change the bill to achieve that success, that support, can't alienate House Republicans or the White House. And so that's why it's a little complicated. The TSA agents missed their first paychecks last week, and that is going to be a key pressure point, I think, moving forward. Eventually, that's going to become untenable for folks. There's other agencies that are under pressure for the county. FEMA is a big one. We're keeping a close eye on the Disaster Relief Fund. I think essential employees at FEMA are still on the job and ready to respond, but the Disaster Relief Fund is something that needs more money in order to sustain the reimbursements that are required and to be ready to respond to other disasters in the future. That number has been going up and down. The FEMA shoved a lot of money out of the door in the last week or two. And so the Disaster Relief Fund has gone down from when we reported last time. So there will be some of these pressure points that will cause Congress to eventually get to the point where I think they will get that bill done. And we're waiting for that to happen so we can get started on FY27. We need the president to send his budget proposals to Congress so we can get started on the appropriations process. That will be another opportunity to request funding for projects through House Community Project Funding or Senate congressionally designated spending. And I think the LPC is planning to talk about that a little bit more later. But even with all of these distractions and delays, Congress is still trying to do things on some important legislation. We've talked about some housing bills in the past. This is HR 6644, the Housing in the 21st Century Act, which was passed by the House in February. and S2651, the Road to Housing Act, which is the Senate version of this bill that was passed by the Senate last year. These are very much still alive. And in fact, the Senate Majority Leader is planning on bringing this up for a vote in the Senate again this week. It'll basically be the Senate bill with a few tweaks to see if they can move a little bit towards the House version. But there's a hurdle that is substantial and could be enough to delay this from moving forward. The White House has sent to the Hill a demand from President Trump that this legislation, whichever version moves, has to have in it some restrictions on institutional investors buying single-family dwellings. And this is very much in line with the Trump administration's affordability argument that they're fighting for Americans. It's a little bit outside of the normal Republican way of doing things. So I think a lot of Republicans have some pause at interfering in the market in this way. I think they're going to find enough common ground to be able to get there eventually, but they're not there yet. And so I'm not sure if this will come up in the Senate this week when the Senate votes on this. They are working with the White House to try to come up with language that can be included in the bill to satisfy the White House without derailing the legislation. So that's a little bit tricky. The Farm Bill is coming up this week in the House Agriculture Committee. Keeping a close eye on that. It doesn't seem to have too much in it that would harm the county in terms of nutrition programs and your other priorities. But it is a very sensitive topic because of the damage to the SNAP program that was done in H.R. 1. And so I do think committee Democrats will be seeking to address that in some way this week. They're keeping their cards pretty close to the vest, but the county staff has helped provide information to Representative Carbajal about SNAP and the local impact. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to use that in his participation in that debate. And there's a couple other bills that I did want to mention. The Water Resources Development Act is the Army Corps bill that authorizes Corps programs and projects. And that's kind of being developed at the committee level this year. And I think we're going to see that come up later in the year. And then there's the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill that's also happening at the committee level right now, where they're trying to get together their draft bills. I mention those because there will be a lot of disputes and delays in Congress this year. It's going to be a difficult year, but I do think those are two bills that will have some traction and may not make it across the finish line by the end of the year, but there will be a substantial progress made on those two, and we're working on your behalf in both of those. In the transportation one, which can have a pretty big impact on the county, there was some encouraging news with a bipartisan bill that was introduced, H.R. 7437. This is the Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Act, or it's being called the Basics Act. And this is intended to help local governments achieve some of their priorities in the reauthorization debate. So it's a bill that's been endorsed by the National Association of Counties, by the National League of Cities, by a number of other organizations and associations in DC that represent regional and local governments. And essentially has provisions in it that do things like suballocating more of the federal transportation formulas to the local level rather than giving as much control over the money to the state as it currently has in decisions about how to allocate it. So it's not the sort of bill that will move on its own, but it could be very useful in the debate influencing the drafting of this legislation. It's obviously intended to be a rallying point for local governments and regional governments organizations. The county public works staff is taking a closer look at this. I'm continuing to look into it, but I do think it will be something the county will want to support once we work out some of the details, it certainly lines up in its themes very well with your platform. So I think that's an encouraging thing. So number of things going on. It's a pretty busy week, but I'll pause there and see if I can answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Don. Any questions in the room?
Hey, Dawn, it's Gina in Jones' office.
Hello.
On the HUD immigration rules, it says that the Department of Housing and Urban Development is proposing a rule and that the public comments are due by April 21st. Can our county comment? I think it fits in
Yes.
our platform. And if you need information from the housing authorities about how many local families would be impacted. In fact, I think Salud's office has it too, but we can get that to you.
Yeah, on commenting on those rules, I definitely try to coordinate closely with the LPC and the county CEO's office before I do anything. So I appreciate that. And that's certainly something we can do.
Jesus has it. I'm looking at him. Jesus is here. So we should plan to get that in by the April 21st deadline.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dawn.
Okay.
Hey, Dawn, Kelly Hubbard, Office of Emergency Management.
Hello.
Hi. Just wondering if you've heard anything, any in the current year on any movement for any of the FEMA apps that were introduced last year. Are any of those still kind of wiggling? Any new ones that we should be looking for?
I don't know of any new ones right now. I do know that the National Association of Counties was in DC last week for their legislative conference.
Yeah.
And that was the FEMA bill was one of the five of bills that they asked counties to focus in on and try to help generate some momentum on.
Which one are they looking at?
The House, the bill that was passed by the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee last year. I forget the bill number on that. But we kind of knew at that point that was going to have hard sledding once it made it out of committee because of the Trump administration's antipathy towards the agency and the desire to see it diminish in its federal role and see a lot of those responsibilities handed over to the states. You know, the Trump administration can't seem to get traction on its efforts. And it's obviously not something that Congress is excited about, but it's still out there. And so it'd be difficult for the House Republicans to bring that up for a vote with the opposition that we should expect from the White House. It doesn't mean it's dead. There's lots of ways to go forward in the legislative process, but we knew it was going to be tough to the next moves on that. So I have not seen a similar bill happen on the Senate side yet, and that would be the thing that I would like to see happen with that. And it doesn't mean that it's not happening behind the scenes, but that would be a big step forward. And if it does make it, it would have to be something that would be offered as an amendment to another bill, or perhaps included at the end of the year when they are assembling these en bloc or omnibus type packages. So it's encouraging in the sense that there's it shows the congressional support for the agency, but it is not really clear that there's a lot of momentum on that right now.
Thank you.
You have anyone online for public comment? Others?
No. I just wanted to add that the City Housing Authority and the County Housing Authority do, in fact, like Gina said, have extensive briefing documents that I'd be happy to forward to our committee members and our staff that could be included in any kind of comment letter. With that, do you guys have them?
We've received them. Just send it if you've got it.
I will.
Will you send it after
I
tomorrow?
will. And on between 4 and 6, closer to 4 p.m. on Wednesday, Rob Fredericks will be doing a comprehensive report as part of our City Housing Authority Commission hearing on this. And if any staff person wants to hear, and we will be providing a template for comments as well to the CFR proposed rules.
Both authorities have been
Working
making
together.
it clear to the
Yes.
community the implications, right?
Yeah, they have. And they're working very closely together. So the county and the city are working closely together.
And if you don't mind, for the record, stating your name.
I'm so sorry. Lisa Carlos, Chair of the City of Santa Barbara Housing Authority Commission.
All right, Dawn, so we'll get you some follow-up information on
Excellent.
the HUD.
Appreciate it.
Other comments? Federal update? Okay, is there a motion to receive and file the report?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
You. Right, we'll move on to item number 4, our state update from Hearst Brooks Espinoza. There were a couple of specific bills that were requested to talk about today. So, Jean and others, if you want to give your usual update, and then we can talk about it, and then we can go through the couple of bills, specific bills. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Claire. The month of February having concluded, we have passed, I guess, the 2026 deadline for bill introduction on February 20th. I think it's appropriate to note that the legislature does have sort of self-imposed caps on the number of bills that they are allowed to introduce. And I think it did force members to make some difficult decisions about what they would pursue in this upcoming legislative session. Still, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new measures to consider this year. Many of them, of course, are in spot form, meaning that there is really no substantive content to the bills, and they are essentially vehicles awaiting future amendments. Those bills will likely be introduced or amended after the sort of 30-day in print period. And people are probably, right, as we speak, working fast and furious on amendments to those bills so that they can get heard in committee hearings in a timely manner. We have done an initial review of those measures and have included a number of them on your initial bill tracking list, but we will continue to monitor amended bills and go over newly introduced bills with your team to identify those that may be of interest and of consequence. Given that the legislature has been sort of focused on getting bills introduced, the committee hearing process has been really focused on the state budget, and primarily, as you'll note in our memo, there are considerable discussions in the legislature about the significant impact of HR 1 on a number of joint programs and services that counties provide on the state's behalf. And the educational efforts are also considerable. You'll note a number of hearings through the month of February as well as into March and April, just to talk about sort of the broad implications that exist. We know that there are a number of meetings happening with leadership, both in the budget committee area, as well as sort of general leaders in the legislature to educate them on the dramatic impacts to counties directly that will result from HR 1 in anticipation of a May revision that includes a state strategy on addressing those implications. So we'll continue to be budget focused for a while bills sort of start to get set in committees. That'll be an iterative process over March and April. We also wanted to know that the Department of Finance has sort of sporadically been posting trailer bill language. That trailer bill language is due by February 1st, but they don't always meet that deadline. And so there's a dashboard on the Department of Finance's website where you can track all proposed trailer bill language. We've noted a couple of particular interests, including some language to implement the eligibility and enrollment changes under HR 1, the recommendations of the Behavioral Health Services Act Revenue and Stability Work Group to recommend solutions for reducing BHSA revenue volatility, and then language to eliminate the IHSS backup provider system as proposed in the January budget. We anticipate additional trailer bill will come forward in addition to April finance letters up until the May revision and maybe even after that. And so we'll continue to monitor the Department of Finance's website for posting of draft trailer bill language. Finally, just wanted to mention very quickly that I know that the county is very interested in the housing bond. The Senate did approve SB 417, which represents the Senate version of a housing bond, and sent it to the Assembly. That bond is a $10 billion measure proposed for the November 2026 general election ballot. The Senate version is similar, although not identical to AB 736, which is the Assembly's version. That bill is in the Assembly, sort of waiting for consideration in the relevant policy committee hearings. It, I think, remains to be seen about how these all get worked out. It does appear that Senator Lamone is interested in pursuing some version of an housing bond in November. Just to note, the Senate did also pass a standalone $4 billion youth housing bond as well. That is now in the Assembly. So there continues to be work necessary to complete negotiations on an eventual housing bond. We haven't really heard a whole lot more about the potential for any other kind of ballot measure as of yet, although given the extensive list of potential ballot initiatives that are being pursued by entities outside the legislative process, we do anticipate some sort of wheeling and dealing when it comes to trying to get measures on and off the ballot through June. So we will continue to keep you apprised. I think possibly later on this month, we'll come up with sort of a where things stand with the ballot initiative process as folks wind up their signature gathering and start sending it to counties for confirmation that they've reached their number of signatures. So we'll get that to you likely sometime in March. With that, Claire, I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can move on to the bills, whatever you prefer.
Any comments or questions so far? Anyone online?
Nope.
Okay. Then yeah, let's talk about the couple of special request bills. So the first one, AB 1761, which has to do with calculating consumer fees related to electricity. So I asked Jeannie Company to do a little research on this for us.
I'm happy to step in.
Thanks, Liz.
Nice to see everybody. I did have a chance to talk to the staffer in Assemblymember Rogers' office who will be shepherding this bill through the process. As you know, Claire had shared with me, and I believe it's included in the packet as well, that this is a bill sponsored by the California Association of the CCAs. So I will preface this by saying this is not an area of expertise on my part, but I can certainly share with you what I learned from the author's office and give you a little bit of information as to where we are in the process. On that latter point, it's still very, very early. The bill was introduced in the weeks following the legislature's return to Sacramento in early January. It will be eligible for hearing the middle part of this month. And the bill has been referred to the Assembly Utilities and Energy Committee, but it does not yet have a hearing date. So there's plenty of opportunity should the LPC and the county give us direction to weigh in on the bill. There's plenty of opportunity for the county to indicate as much to the author and to the policy committee to which it's been referred. But in very basic terms, the bill has to do with seeking greater transparency for the process associated with the setting of the PCIA, which is basically the exit fee that is established when a group of consumers leaves an investor-owned utility to move into an alternative, into a CCA. The concern that was expressed is that there is currently not transparency, and frequently during the process, the investor-owned utility informs the involved parties about the setting of the fee and the particular level of the fee very, very late in the process, with like perhaps as short as a day's notice. So the bill would seek to provide an additional opportunity not only to engage in the CPUC process and talk to folks, but also to require some additional timeframes so that there is more opportunity for both the CCA and the consumers to better understand what their long-term costs are going to be, because typically these fees are passed on to the consumer. So we're happy to listen to any conversation that the LPC has, and if you choose to take a position on this, I'm happy to engage. The staff didn't have a whole lot of feedback to give on who they've heard from. I think they've had some initial conversations with the IOUs, PG&E in particular, but there wasn't any particular feedback given, and there hasn't been specific formal positions yet taken on the bill that they communicated to us. So I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Liz.
So I think from the perspective of our county residents, this is a really important bill. We get our energy, unless you opt out in our county, you get your energy from CCAs, in our case, 3CE. And these charges, the PCIA, is really set by the CPUC, influenced by the investor-owned utilities at rates that the underlying justification is that people who are going into the CCAs need to pay for the ongoing costs, the long-term contracts that these investor-owned utilities entered into to provide reliable service. But they change every year, and they are make it really hard for CCAs to function well as they could. And the PCUC process is so difficult to track and understand. And so it's, I think, an effort to bring greater transparency and just make it more rational would be an important thing. So from the county perspective, from our sustainability program, and just from our residents, this is really important.
I think Assemblymember Rogers' office would love to have the county support, if I didn't make that clear.
Great. So what's our next step then, if we want to show that?
Yeah, it sounds compelling to me. I didn't know about it, and now that I do, it sounds important. So I'm happy to weigh in. we want to make a motion.
Is
that
it
possible?
consistent with the platform plank?
I would say,
Forward.
I would say so. And as you mentioned, Supervisor, 3CE is very interested in this. The operations board had a recent conversation, and the transparency dimension is critical to understanding how it impacts the rates that 3CE needs to contend with. So
Yeah.
very much so.
Susan, I don't know if you have a part of the platform you're pointing to. We have a little bit of information in there about, or a little bit of commentary about consumer protection, but it's focused on ag and weights and measures. It's not really like a general transparency or consumer protection. I mean, the bill's kind of just getting going, so we have time, you know, if you want to take that to the board, or Jesus, if you have something, I'm certainly open to
Yeah, I'm
discussion
at
of
Sure.
interpreting our
And I don't expect anybody to write on make a decision at this moment, but if it has to go to the board, I think it's worth it. I think it even getting more transparency within our county, because our energy rates go down, but the bill keeps going up.
Right.
And they think that it's us. So anything to help explain this, it's enormously complicated, and that's why transparency helps.
So I guess we could just ask that staff look into whether or not it fits on the existing platform, and if not, bring it to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, a motion to support, and then we'll
Right.
the research.
Okay, so I move that we support Roger's bill,
And I second.
1761.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, staff will work on that. We'll bring to the board if needed. All right, and then there was one other bill. So it was actually a bill from the previous legislative session that passed. But it's brought to our attention that there are some maybe some gaps in the wording, intentional, maybe unintentional, that's creating some issues for planning and development. The bill is silent on ADU setbacks and the size of certain ADUs, creating some issues, and the state regulatory interpretation is quite broad, creating some concerns. That's SB 1211 from the 23-24 session. And so I also asked HBE if they would look into this, if they had some sense of whether these this interpretation, I guess, was the intent of the legislature or not, and how that might inform our strategy for addressing this in a future session.
Thanks so much, Claire, and I do apologize. Chris Lee is held up on a meeting previously. If you would just give us a couple of minutes, and I can text you and let you know when he's available or when he sends me the information that he was going to share.
Sure, we can
sorry about that.
certainly all good, circle back. We know he's busy, and we appreciate his expertise. So we'll let me know, and we can circle back on that item. Any public comment online that's
I would
popped
wait
up,
until-
or
Yeah, I know, to take public comment. You're waiting to finish 3, so I recommend
Mhm.
waiting to take public comment until you hear the remainder.
but if we move on to another item?
Yeah, I think you can hold on this item and then move to item number 4.
Okay. Five.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Amber. All right, so we'll return to item 4 when we have a little more information to finish up on that, and we'll take any comments and other motions. So we'll move on to item number 5, the 2026 critical projects for legislative funding. So this list is in your materials, and the purpose of this list are projects that are of critical importance to the county, but there may not be full funding available through the county. And so our advocates work to obtain funding from the state or the federal government. This list is something that we ask the LPC to approve, and then the board to approve, and then staff and advocates work throughout the year to find funding opportunities. There could be various kinds of these opportunities. One that is coming up right now is the federal earmarks process. This is congressionally directed spending or community project funding. And so Don can give us some extra insight and information if there are any questions, but I'll start with just the list. In your memo, any changes from 2025 have been tracked so you can see what's different. And then the new projects are listed after that. And so we're up to a healthy list of 23 projects. And the numbers you see at the top are the full amount that would be needed to complete that project. Depending on what funding opportunity we're going after, we typically request a smaller amount. So, for example, for the federal earmarks, we're usually looking at around $1 million. Are there any comments on the projects on the list? Discussion?
I have a question. If we just got a $10 million idea, can we still add? Can we still add?
Well, as you've seen, there's a $50 million item on this list. So yeah, typically nothing would fund that completely, but we
Right.
add it to the list and
We,
know,
we
assuming we-
forgot Fire Station 10 in Goleta. And we maybe should add that to the list. And we wonder if there's still time.
absolutely, this is the discussion. This is the committee's list. So, but by all means, Supervisor, would you like to tell us about it or?
We'd have our fire chief here, but you know more about it than I.
Yeah, Station 10 is kind of a unique situation because there's an MOU with the city of Goleta right now that we're trying to re-look at. But yeah, Fire Station 10, and then there's another one in Orchid too, that both have been on the master plan is needing to be built for decades. And so we're trying to figure out ways to get both of those stations funded and built. So Station 10 is kind of unique though, because I don't know if we ask for it with the MOU with Goleta until we switch it, change it.
We have I think we have other projects that are joint with cities or different jurisdictions.
Perfect.
Stuff, so.
Good. I know they would be interested in it. They're very interested in moving that forward.
Thank you, Chief Huff, for being here and giving us that information. So, is there a motion to add Fire Station just 10 or?
I guess that raises the issue. What about the Orchid Fire Station?
I just have a quick question. Are either or both of those included in the capital improvement program, the 5-year CIP? You know?
No, there's been conversations about Station 25, but not Station 10.
Okay, so that's
Just neither, right? Or
there are in the
Well, there's a new CIP that they're doing for the North County Jail that we're trying to figure out if we could be part of that.
I see.
no, you're talking about the COP as opposed to the CIP. The CIP is the programmatic, but
Oh.
the board is considering tomorrow, actually.
It's not on,
I don't know. We're just trying to remember. I was looking
Yeah,
at it this
we can
morning.
look.
I know 25s is on that list.
Okay.
That's a capital deal. I think 10 because we've got it, as the chief said, a unique arrangement with the city of Goleta.
They're supposed to build it and we're supposed to run it, but.
Yeah.
We don't like to run out of buildings we don't own, and so we're trying to figure out how to work this.
Okay.
And so in that,
Station 25 is on that list.
It is?
Yeah.
Good.
so Goleta would be building it and the county's operating, or did I get that backwards?
No, you got it correct, and I think the negotiations are trying to figure that out.
That's under the current MOU that's about to expire. So.
I just think ultimately it's an attractive project potentially unless firehouses are excluded, but it's attractive. It checks a lot of different boxes and we often have projects in other jurisdictions that are mutually beneficial. So since there's not a limit on the net we can cast, just as long as we cast a smart net, I think it fits in that.
Okay. Yeah, I was asking because typically these are capital projects. So in that case, the money potentially would go to Goleta, but I'm sure we can sort that I don't know
Yeah,
logistics.
and again, we're probably getting, if, we don't like to operate out of facilities we don't own. And so we may well let that MOU expire and try to, but, it's still a question mark. But if we could get it on the list, that would be helpful. Even if it doesn't happen this year, it's there for next year.
Sure.
Can we get a write-up? If we put a request from fires. You guys probably already have one, but.
A paragraph, it's just like a
a
paragraph.
paragraph.
Sure, yeah. On both or just one?
Both?
I think both,
Okay.
gets us to an even 25.
Nice round number.
I'm feeling the pressure to add, but I'm not.
Well, record show.
Bless you.
I wanted to.
I'm very responsible.
Yeah.
Do I hear
Couple
30?
things I wanted to add to what Claire said. One is
35.
this list
Hey, just
is
round up.
big and it's meant to be sort of broad and be, inclusive of every kind of project in the county. It doesn't mean that all of these projects will
No.
be submitted. We're not going to
Right,
hand the whole,
right,
I just want to
right.
clarify, we're not going to hand the whole list to our delegation. We use, our federal advocate and state advocates expertise to go after and submit projects that fit what, what meets the bill for the House and the Senate in this case, are coming up.
We don't even know their criteria yet, so.
Right, we have a little bit of it. It looks like but yeah, we don't know
What
it
do
yet.
we know
So we have
so
to.
far?
Don, I know we had your update, but do you have a little bit of insights on some of the criteria that they've been talking about for this session?
The criteria is very similar to last year's. The House actually has released its guidance from the
it
House
has.
Appropriations Committee. The
Oh.
Senate Appropriations Committee has not.
So
So
no
we
swimming
are-
pools, no feeders. I mean, the things that are excluded, can you comment on that?
Yeah. So, and we're relying on last year's guidance for the Senate side, but Senator Schiff and Senator Padilla's staff has told us that will be what they'll be using until further notice. So, yeah, swimming pools are not eligible under some of the more fruitful earmarking accounts. I have not done a fire station project, but I do believe it would be eligible under at least one of the accounts, which is the HUD Economic Development Initiative. I think if you think back to the State of the Union address and the messaging and the counter messaging that was going on, this year is going to be even more so about which side can demonstrate how they're fighting for the common man and making people's lives better and more affordable. Affordability is a term that's very, very much, it's almost in everything that we are doing in DC right now, because both sides are trying to make the case that they're addressing those issues. So that's not that different than in the past. We've known in the past that lower income communities and disadvantaged communities will often have a greater need for assistance, and the case is a little bit easier to make for those types of projects, especially in the HUD Economic Development Initiative, that requires a lot of legwork to statistically document some of those questions. So those are some of what we see so far, but we also work directly with the local delegation to try to line up with whatever their particular concerns are. And so that's just an ongoing effort that we do as we have this list, and we've done some preliminary work already, but certainly once this list is approved, we'll kick that into high gear.
Would you send us a copy of the House criteria that has been released?
I can send that, sure. Every subcommittee has its criteria.
Oh, I see.
And
I see.
so I can send Representative Carbajal has a funding guide that he put together. It hasn't been updated with the latest guidance, and
I
really
see.
the only change of the guidance would be that this year the House is going to allow healthcare facilities to be earmarked through HRSA. And you recall last year, the House does not allow energy projects to be earmarked. That's a difference between the House and the Senate side. That hasn't changed. So if I were to send you Carvajal's funding guide, you would get 99% of what's out there.
Thank you.
Have our senator prepared similar guidelines, Don, that you're aware of?
The same type of document exists, except it's from last year. They haven't updated it without having seen any Senate Appropriations Committee guidance. So it's like a 35-page booklet, which is available on their websites. I can send it to whoever wants it. I'd be happy to make it easy for you to get a hold of it.
I think that would be helpful because we might pursue one versus the other representative.
Yeah, Don, they work on that.
Yeah.
Given the criteria. So we give them a menu and they choose.
Right.
Well said.
Right.
Claire, can you clarify, when is this going to the board?
March 10th,
So
the full
if-
list.
If they want to add the fire station, is there time to amend it for that
Mhm.
agenda?
Yeah, we're gonna,
By Thursday, yeah.
yeah, we'll amend the list before it posts, for the agenda posts.
And then will you, if we know, based on what Don just said, criteria, will you take, or will you just put it forward anyways? Because like we have a aquatics complex on here, but it sounds like there's written guidance updated that we know excluded, which we thought was a possibility, but.
Yeah, so we regard this list as for many opportunities.
Okay.
And the federal earmarks is the thing that's happening right now. And we'll choose some projects on the list, but like, for example, the aquatics complex, having it on here, there might be something else that comes along.
Okay.
And it's a project that doesn't go into our CIP, for example, the county's capital improvement program, because it's not
Okay.
fully just county. So I think it's appropriate to keep it on the list.
Great.
And so then, since ours 25 projects now, how do they get prioritized for submittal to the Don for, and then the check mark to see which one gets actually submitted to our representatives?
They do it.
They do it.
Yeah, we get a lot of
defer
a lot
to
of
the
advice from
expertise. Yeah.
Don. He's right, like is the expert in terms of the guidance. So we see what will qualify, what won't qualify. We look at what's been funded in the past to see what's kind of an attractive project. He can hear from the staff, like what are they kind of looking for? Like the amounts, for example, right? These projects typically around $1 million. So we need to know that the rest of it can be funded or that it's scalable so that it is still a meaningful project. So we look at all those things.
So the numbers here are simply a numerical listing, not a ranking, right?
Correct.
Right.
That's correct. There's no ranking
Yeah.
on this list. This
I think it's the
menu.
order that it came in.
Pretty much.
5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, some of them.
5 years.
Yeah.
No, because there's proposed new for 2026, so 11 on were all of our multi-million-dollar ideas.
Claire, just for 21 on page 6 of that, sorry, 36 of the agenda, I realize, page 6 of the document that we're talking about right now. Just to provide that cost estimate, we're putting that around 30,000. We know that's not a big ticket item compared to the rest of the list. It's more about who owns the infrastructure once it's built for long-term maintenance and management, and would help fill a gap for a vulnerable community that has very little communications.
We can update that in the list.
Thank you.
Comments on the list, discussion points, additions? Public comments. So do we have a motion or
I make the motion that we put forward this list to the board,
And a second,
Plus.
and with your
plus the additions.
the two fire stations. Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
You. All right, that completes item number 5. Chris Lee, if you're available, we can go back to item 4. Wonderful.
Hey there.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for
Sorry
joining
about
us.
that.
All good. No
Double
problem.
booked this morning.
You're busy.
I wanted to follow up regarding the questions about the ADU related bill from a few years ago. I think it's one where the legislative intent was clearly to eliminate various local ordinance related impediments to accessory dwelling unit construction. So while this specific issue of setbacks in front yards, I don't know if that was explicitly considered. The text of the bill is pretty explicit in terms of saying that the only standards that should apply are the ones that are included in this statute. So I definitely think if it's something where there's a specific concern, I think not having anything in the statute to point to is going to make it a really high hurdle. There are several accessory dwelling unit related bills that have been introduced in the current session. There's really 4, but the overarching sort of theme of those bills is either they're currently spot bills or they're designed at kind of further accelerating the development of ADUs and removing limitations. So that's essentially this where we're at this moment. I think there's probably some of those authors who might be willing to consider something like this. But I think I would really say 3 out of the 4 of them are probably much more interested in just further clarifying or further removing impediments to accessory dwelling unit discussion. So development, sorry. So happy to discuss or take any direction as appropriate, but that's what we were able to come up with.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that perspective. I don't know if the other comments from the committee or how you'd like us to proceed. It sounds like maybe there's an avenue to make some changes, but that in general, that's in line with their intent.
Well, could you talk, Chris, about the one author who might be open? I mean, I think that we're really in favor of ADUs, but it will change the character of our communities to have them in the front yard.
Yeah, and it's a freshman author, so the bill is AB 2127 by Assemblymember Natasha Johnson from Riverside County. And so she's, member of the Republican caucus. But again, that bill is related to, it's an intent bill talking about wanting to encourage ADUs in rural areas. So, there might be some appetite there. It's just I look at the other authors and the bill topics, Assemblymember Quirk Silva with AB 956. She's been one of the biggest champions of eliminating barriers to ADU construction. Senate Bill 1117 by Senator Cervantes is clarifying limitations on development impact fees for ADUs. And then SB 1196 by Senator McNerney. His chief of staff was one of the big proponents and worked on a lot of the early accessory dwelling unit bills when she was a staffer for Senator Skinner. So again, I think the overwhelming sort of direction is removing barriers, but of those 4 authors, the one that I would consider pitching this to and most likely to have some success would be Assemblymember Johnson.
I'm sorry, this is on here just because there was confusion from P&D or what's
Direction from HCD saying they can build in the front setback.
Sure, I can add some context if that would be helpful. So the current ADU regulations, and have stated this for some time, they're prescriptive in their side and rear setback allowances, but they're silent on front setbacks. And up until, say, a year or so ago, I think most jurisdictions interpreted that to mean the silence as typical standard front setbacks would apply to those. And with the change in the law come last year that said, as Chris indicated, that you can't apply any standards that aren't explicitly authorized by the statute, that led to the interpretation that since front setbacks aren't listed, you can't apply front setbacks. So theoretically, someone could build right up to the property line, an 800 square foot ADU, and the local jurisdiction would have no ability to restrict that. So I think that has led to a lot of confusion amongst various jurisdictions and concern from a planning perspective. And I think questionable the intent, if that was clearly understood on the specific issue with regard to front setbacks, but that's become problematic. And so I think that issue was raised here. And if there was interest, I think that we'd be advocating for at least some bare minimum setback for front yards, just like they've established for side and rear.
So I'm just process wise, we just flagged it. Why are we discussing it? Because we flagged it for more clarification. Our ledge staff?
Well, it came to us, but the question is, do we want to pursue legislation that would make these clarifications so that the interpretation from HCD is not what it is now? So that there would be a front setback, like add something to a bill so that then there would be a front setback, for example.
Our planning director talked to our office about it, and she's been in touch with Assemblymember Hart. And so it was just, can we get the ball rolling on this? Is there ability to ask the legislature to clarify or to pass legislation just to make a fix, essentially?
Yeah. Surely they didn't think of this.
And there was one other piece to it, which is there was another classification of ADUs for which there's no size limit established. Which again, with that combined with no front setback, you could theoretically have unlimited sized ADU right up against the property line, which again can create a whole host of planning issues.
It's good to me to try to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The motion for us to pursue some legislation on this.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
You?
I have a question. Is this something that we would take to CSAC or try to coordinate or collaborate with CSAC on, or just see if other jurisdictions have figured this out? Because the HCD guidance is rather new, right?
Well, it's becoming more explicit in their guidance. Yeah, I think their guidance continues to evolve as we get new laws or new amendments to the law every year. But they've maintained the front setback position for at least for the last year and a half. And we did, as a jurisdiction, receive a letter from a state HCD identifying that as one of our compliance issues with our current regulations. And other jurisdictions have received similar letters, corrective letters.
It might be of value to identify those jurisdictions and see what they're thinking about this. How big is the problem? How widely is it recognized as a problem? Do we have any information about that?
Only anecdotal. We participated in a webinar hosted by state HCD staff a few weeks ago, and a lot of jurisdictions who were monitoring that webinar sort of flagged that as an area of concern. I'm going to be meeting with the city of Santa Barbara to discuss ADU regulations, because they're in a similar position of having to make some amendments to their regulations to comply with state law, and we'll get a sense from them in a couple of weeks how they're addressing this issue as well. But I do know that various jurisdictions over the last year and a half or so have made amendments to their ADU regulations to remove based on input from HCD and the change to the law to remove the front setback requirement.
Okay.
Somewhat begrudgingly, I would imagine.
So how, I think Gina's question is still on the table. How do we approach CSAC?
Yeah, and HBE always helps us kind of coordinate with other jurisdictions that might be interested and vice versa. Sometimes we get information from them, and we can reach out to CSAC as well. It sounds like it's probably a widespread concern, I would guess. So yeah, happy to include that as part of the process, and we'll investigate whether we can have some language added to one of the existing bills.
I have a clarification question. Is the suggestion to focus on the setback requirements or a prohibition on ADUs in the front yard? 'Cause those are two different approaches.
Setback, the setback. I didn't state it correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, we already provide for allowances of ADUs in front yards. It's just having no minimum is the problem.
And you had also raised a question about size. So are you suggesting that both elements be addressed?
I am, yeah.
Good point.
And Alex, would you point to the other sections of code and use those limits as the standard?
Right.
Like the language you would want would be same setbacks and sizes.
Yes, I mean, I think that
Staying elsewhere in the code is just prohibited in that section.
well, it's completely silent on front setbacks with that throughout.
So we can coordinate with planning and then, yeah, so I think we have our direction. We may be bringing this back to the committee. We'll see.
Right, so with that, we can wrap up item 4. Are there any further comments?
Is it appropriate to bring up legislation we just became aware of on the state side that is of concern, or should we bring that up later and for future?
I would just say we have folks here. Can we bring it up at the end?
Yeah, at the end.
Okay,
That's what I wanted to.
we'll move it to future business. So to wrap up item 4, do I have a motion to receive the other information that we have from the state update?
Yes, so moved.
You, all
And
in
then just
favor?
clarification, recognizing the prior 2 motions that were made on the sub items.
Sounds good. So moved with those other 2 motions.
Right. Right, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is item 6. This is a follow-up from our last meeting. Item 6 is county-owned property development for county employee housing. There's a brief memo in your packet. So this was discussed at our last meeting. Committee members asked staff to return with some information about whether property that's owned by the county could be developed specifically as county employee housing. So we've had some various discussions and research. And I would say the short version is it seems like, yes, that can happen. Potentially there could be some specifics to a particular development or the need for affordable housing tax credits through the federal government. There are like some nuances depending on the project that there might be a need for legislation in the future. But so far we think that the authority is existing. I don't know, Seuss, if you want to comment, one of the properties that we were talking about specifically is redevelopment of this former probation office that CSD is handling.
But just summary, it looks like county council did a great job of looking through some various sections of the government code and found a section that seems to give us the ability to focus on county employees when there is a county partnership involved.
Mhm.
And so we were concerned that we would not be able to pursue that, but with that finding, we think we're going to be in good shape. And when we come to the board for the selection of a developer, we'll be able to speak to that more directly.
But it's, if I may, only rental and only county employees, right?
Not simply county employees. The definition is broad enough that it could cover other public
Oh, okay. I
public
understand.
employees.
Then-
Yeah.
Thank you for the work. I'm not super comfortable with it. It might be, I would like to go further than that. I just feel very strongly the fact that only a third of that a third of our employees don't live in the county.
Mm.
And just so much of what we hear from employees is that they can't afford to live here. We hear all the time, and whether it's firefighters, whether it's our service employers, our benefits employees. I just don't know why we would really be going through all of this effort to provide housing if we're not really fighting for housing our own employees. And so I would feel more comfortable if we were certain that it would, and rather than sort of the language
Sure.
like it might.
Sure.
And also ownership is also really important. Yeah, I'm happy that the first go with this is rentals, because we certainly need more rentals and low income rentals. But we also want people that work for the county to be able to stay at the county. I've just really tracked what College Hospital's done, and that ownership project on the Tatrina is key to keeping and retaining nurses in particular. That project is mostly nurses that live there. So I just don't want to hamstring ourselves by this language that kind of covers us, we think. So I would say this is great, but why not try to get legislation? Again, I'm out and about in the community, and people, especially our own employees, really want us to do this, as I understand.
The challenge is going to be probably more on the market rate than on the affordable, particularly as it relates to
Yeah,
for sale
I
property.
don't know why we would do a market rate, but that's me. That's my opinion, is we have plenty of market rate. in
No,
this-
I'm simply saying we may not be able to do that at all on the market rate. We may have some opportunity to do it on the affordable side, yes.
Yeah.
And if there's a desire to reinforce the analysis that county council has prepared by advancing draft legislation, we can do that as well.
But again, if our employees can afford market rate elsewhere, why would we be building housing for them?
I'm not suggesting we are. I'm suggesting you couldn't develop a regulation that would require the market rate developer to have a local preference for
Sure.
others.
Yeah, so I don't know what the next step is, other than I guess I would just state that I would still like to pursue legislation.
Okay.
I mean, I can, again, just talk to our own legislators about it, but was hoping that the heft of this committee would be behind
So
it.
bills have been introduced, but they're spot bills that might be able to incorporate something like this, or?
We can continue to work with our state advocates and see how we might best structure that. Sooner rather than later is what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess in the immediate term, it appears that on the probation side, we'll be in pretty good shape. But the clarity
Sounds right.
that you're asking, we can.
And that's the
continue.
most immediate with the 3-year time frame.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, good. I mean, this is a great first step that we understand I looked into the what is the existing
Mhm.
Law or policy or code that the county council found, and that was good to see that it's already on the books. That's reassuring. So I'm happy to have that knowledge. I just don't think it covers the bases that I'm hoping to cover.
Understood.
Great.
Sorry, was there
Yeah,
please introduce yourself for the committee.
yes, Anna Arce. And thank you Supervisor Capps about the homeownership. This may be like a future question or suggestion, but also including like opportunities for like sweat equity with those like home ownership opportunities for folks. And then this is super new to me, like when it comes to like housing development, but also like, for example, if somebody is working with the county or is like a teacher or whatever, like whoever this falls under, if they stop working with the county for whatever reason, not being removed from those like housing opportunities or having like a grace period, like a buffer, so that way they're not automatically like, you're leaving your job and now you're leaving your home as well.
Yeah, thank you for if I may, thank you for bringing up that, we aren't the first to be doing this, and so we're learning from other models that are exploring these very same things, like Santa Barbara Unified is doing rental on the Parma site off of Milpas. They're ahead of us, so yes, for certain, it's trying to find the right balance of creating the housing for their employees, but also not being cruel and recognizing that there is going to be turnover, obviously, if you do rentals, and coming up with some sort of system that's fair and very transparent on the front end of what happens to those units when the employee is, no longer terminated or on their own chooses to leave, and having some sort of fair system. But again, that there are even consultants. Jesus has done a great job of tracking sort of this space, because it isn't, it's an exciting space of government getting into the business of developing housing and tracking sort of how people are doing this successfully. And again, Cottage Hospital is doing it, but they are doing ownership first at Mitchell Trina. I believe that their development on De La Vina is going to be ownership as well. Although if it's rentals, we can certainly learn from the model that they're doing. And then their other development is going to be at the Carey property in
Yes.
Salida. And maybe some of those are rentals. So we're a few years behind other developments, and we can learn from their mistakes and from their successes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say maybe behind, but through the
Not
leadership
behind.
of the board, we're accelerating.
It's a very positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supervisor Capps, maybe you can make a motion to receive the report and to work on some legislation.
Yeah, that'd be great. So in gratitude, I'll receive the report of the information thus far, and also continue to pursue legislation.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move to item 7, policy landscape of Kratom and 70H regulation. There's another memo in your packet. We'll also get some input from our state and federal folks who helped advise on this as well. So there is an evolving regulatory environment around Kratom and 70H, 70H being a more concentrated form of the Kratom plant. There is some work happening at the federal level. The FDA has requested that it be scheduled, at least 7H be scheduled by DEA. So that's working its way through the federal regulatory process. That's one option that the committee, if you want to weigh in, we could send some letters and Don could help us work on that. There's also some work happening at the state level. There's one bill that's still pending, which is a regulatory bill, would add to an existing law around regulation for food, drugs, and cosmetics. Some of the provisions are banning the sale to those under 21 and trying to make the products less attractive to youth. And this bill is in process, so that's something else that the committee could do to support. There was a previous bill that would have made this possession a criminal offense, but that bill has since been amended and is not related to these products any longer. And for a little bit of context, there are 7 states and also the District of Columbia that have banned Kratom entirely. It's effectively banned in Florida as well. There are some counties and cities kind of doing their own regulation around this. Los Angeles County, Riverside County are some of those. Sometimes this is done through the public health agency where they're regulating, and sometimes it is more of an actual ban. So this is supported through the platform. So if the committee wants us to take action on either the state or federal level, that's something we're able to do. Before discussion, I'll defer first to Don and then to HBE if there's anything you'd like to add to that kind of quick overview.
The memo is excellent and really summarizes well what's happening on the federal level. I'll just say that the option of supporting federal scheduling of 70H doesn't necessarily have to be make a decision about whether that's done administratively by the DEA or whether it's done legislatively. And it can be done legislatively. I don't see that happening this year or in the foreseeable future. The legislative landscape there is not, doesn't seem to be there to move this legislatively through Congress. So FDA's proposal to DEA is definitely the thing has the most traction right now and is the likely way that this would go forward. And if you were to adopt this idea of supporting federal scheduling, that's where we would focus our attention. But it would give us the ability to also weigh in with Congress, and certainly we would want to do that.
It's done. HB, Liz, I know you did some research and listened to the hearing on this topic for us.
I did, yes. Thank you, Claire. I would note for you that in our update that will go out later today, we provide a summary of a Senate Health Committee hearing from February 18th on this topic. It was quite lively and a lot of engagement from the members of the Senate Health Committee, particularly the chair, who is a physician herself. As Claire's memo outlines, there is a bill moving through the legislature, AB 1088, by Jasmeet Bains, who's an assembly member from the Central Valley, also happens to be a physician. That bill will be heard in the Senate Health Committee later this year. And basically what it sets up is a Consumer Protection Act to address some of the very common themes that we heard in the informational hearing, which are also outlined in the memo. I guess what I would say is that the themes that were discussed in the hearing is that there is a considerable amount of product category confusion between Kratom, which is the naturally occurring leaf, and 7-OH, which is a more potent alkaloid, I believe they call it, that is in Kratom, but at much higher levels of potency. There is confusion associated with packaging and labeling. People believe that they're purchasing a natural product, something more akin to a supplement, and then it can result in dependency, and certainly challenges with coming down off of the drug. There was a doctor from the University of Arkansas who spoke about the sort of pharmacological effects, and it was very concerning. There were representatives from Los Angeles County who talked about an uptick in sort of unexplained deaths in I believe it was the 19 to 40-year-old, primarily males, that they couldn't attribute to a natural cause, and they have since tied it back to overdoses resulting from 7-OH. It behaves like a very potent opioid, and I think folks are probably all aware that it's the respiratory depression that often leads to death. So there, again, discussion about product category confusion, consumer misunderstanding, and then the biggest issue is really the enforcement capacity as being the bottleneck. From the local perspectives, the County Health Executives Association spoke about their capacity, which is very limited, to try to enforce this at the local level. They really advocated for a statewide enforcement structure that would require new resources because this is a sort of a brand new area of law and of enforcement. My sense is that there will be interest in the Senate Health Committee on Assemblymember Baines's bill, but again, that won't be heard because it's a bill that already passed the Assembly and is in the Senate now. It is likely not to be heard until a little bit later on in the year, so there would be time should the LPC have an interest in expressing support for that effort.
Comments?
Yes, I'd love to hear public comment. I'm certainly 1,000% in support of weighing in support of this legislation.
And the DEA scheduling.
Sure. Yes, both.
To go first, or would you like to? Hi, my name's Craig Abbey. I spoke to you guys in December about my son Arlen, who got addicted to 7-OH pills. He's here. He popped out of his room this morning and said he'd like to come, and he may have some comments for you in a minute. I'll be curious to hear those too. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to look at this. It makes me so happy to know that people are going to try and do something about it. And I wanted to offer 3 comments on the sort of Kratom 7OH landscape. And the first one being that there's increasing awareness about these products, both in good ways and bad ways. In the good ways, there's been a couple great articles in The Independent and Newshawk with, I would say, really positive input from the county through the county public health and through the sheriff's office. So I think that's making people more aware. One of the first lines of defense I think you have is just people knowing what they're getting into. On the bad side, I think these products are proliferating pretty strongly outside of smoke shops now. So he tells me he sees them in liquor stores sometimes. I know someone else who told me they were seeing them in a health food store in Carpinteria. So the packaging really makes them look like they are health dietary supplements. The people taking them actually oftentimes don't know what they're taking. So I think that's a really scary thing. And these are not children now. One of the people I know who's dealing with kratom addiction is in his 50s. So that's not someone who's going to necessarily be excluded by the child kind of protections that are being in place. There's a lot of legislation pending currently. I didn't realize we were going to get such a good review of it, so I'll kind of skip through this. I did ask Salute Carvajal's office if they could get a sense of when a decision might get reached by the DEA, and they told me they'll hear back in 30 to 45 days. They told me that a few weeks ago, so maybe in another month. I wrote the DEA myself and basically got a legalese kind of letter saying, check the Federal Register. So I don't know. I don't know when that will necessarily happen. At the state level, you pointed out the 2 things I'd seen. There were 2 bills being considered. The other one was SB 758, which had the language about 7OH and kratom in it that got struck out. I assume that was because they didn't want the 2 things overlapping and potentially conflicting, but I don't actually know. That was just a guess. What I liked about 758 is it criminalized the sale of it. It specifically wrote about it as a crime. 708 AB 1088 it appears to me to accomplish the main thing that we care about, which is the really potent 7OH pills, which were the big problem for our family, and I think are the big problem generally. So I think that part is good, but I have some concerns about it still. It's not really a ban. It leaves open a pathway to the sale of kratom products, and the criterion is so long as 7OH is less than 2% of the total kratom alkaloid content. And that's just vague. I see a lot of problems with that. I could go on for a long time about it, which I don't want to do. But I just would ask how you would feel if I approached you with a product called Fentanyl Light that has just enough fentanyl in it that you would get a mood boost. What could possibly go wrong with that? So to me, as a parent and member of the community and such, what makes the most sense to me is to ban it. If other places want to run this sort of uncontrolled experiment on their people, that's really up to them if they want to decide differently. But I think we should start from a position of caution and wait to see if the science and the experience really bear this stuff out, and warrant a strong measure of banning it. If it turns out it's excessive, you can unban it, right? There's nothing that requires you to keep that in place. And my third point was also made there, which is just that vigilant enforcement is going to be important. And I think the idea of dedicating resources to that would be really good. There is just a huge amount of money to be made selling these opioids, whether it's Purdue Pharma or the Wildside Smoke Shop with its nine stores in our general region, or if it's somebody on the street selling opioids. There's just a lot of money to be made, and it's not easy to make it go away. So there will surely be some resistance to trying to get rid of it. And I hope I hope there will be just consideration of what enforcement resources might be needed for whatever action the county takes. Thank you. That's my comments.
Yeah, I didn't have anything written down. I think I have 2 kind of general points I'd like to make, one of which is more scientific and one of which is more anecdotal. So on one aspect, something that I feel is not often properly understood about 7OH and kratom is that 7-OH, like mitragynine, which is the active ingredient in kratom, is a very mild opiate, or essentially acts as a very mild opiate in your body. 7-OH is somewhere between 10 and 25 times stronger, is my understanding. And at a similar dosage is comparable to morphine or like Vicodin. So it's, and in some areas it's actually above, like in respiratory depression, it's more powerful than morphine. So I think it's a little staggering to me that it is legal considering its strength. And so I really want to make that side of stuff clear. And then anecdotal experience, I experienced addiction firsthand and saw it. I cannot overstate the kind of level of pleasurable feeling it brought, and also the habit forming element of it.
Would you mind explaining how you got exposed to it, how you were enticed into it?
So I had on occasion used kratom as like a morning lift my mood thing. There were times I used it more, times I didn't. It wasn't a particularly harmful habit for me, but it wasn't great. And I came into a smoke shop in town and was essentially sold it. The person at the front was saying, "Hey, you like kratom? We have this new stuff, the 7-OH, and everybody loves it. People are switching over to it. Everyone's giving us great reviews. You should try some." And I said they sold like a little starter amount for a very small amount of money. And I said, okay. And I tried it and yeah, kind of took off from there. But I was sold it somewhat intentionally.
And then how did you start your early morning kratom? I mean, until your dad came, I'd never heard of this.
Yeah. I mean, I study chemistry and I study pharmacology, and I was kind of aware of it. I had friends who had used it on and off, and it was a way to, like, as I was going through quantum mechanics and difficult classes, I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I was waking up rough. I had a friend who recommended it to me.
Yeah. So it's in the ether out there in a certain.
It is not uncommon. Kratom and even the 7-OH, I would ask when I'd go into smoke stores. I went to quite a few in town, although there are more now. What's your best selling item? And I would say about 90% of the time it was 7-OH products. So take that for what it is. It's anecdotal, but I think it's worth a little consideration, especially considering how, I don't know, I feel like I'm seeing smoke shops pop up more. And I could be wrong about that. I could be noticing them more now, but there are a lot of smoke shops in Santa Barbara now. And I don't remember there being a lot of smoke shops in Santa Barbara, but there are like more than 10.
So currently they're illegal. No, it's all completely legal.
Yeah. It's not.
That's
It's not
complicated.
regulated.
It's
Yeah,
Not
just
regulated.
vacuum.
not regulated.
Local jurisdictions are stepping up without federal action and without state is kind of figuring out what it wants to do. So we have, and our county health department has sent us, and this morning I
Right.
received report, which is just to, I think they're pursuing at the local level outright bans.
100%.
The challenge is that when we ban flavored tobacco, for instance, we have tobacco enforcement, which is funded by tobacco.
Right.
We have no enforcement dollars to go along with it.
Right.
So it's a policy decision for you to decide, well, regardless, let's pursue an ordinance. And then the question is, coming out of ledge, how do we get that to the board? How do we?
Yeah.
So
And then are there any medical applications? I mean, people with, pain management is important. So are there any
Not at this
legitimate
age.
uses of?
Yeah.
There is one I've heard of, which is essentially in that it is useful for people who essentially have an allergy to opiates, classic opiates. Beyond that, it's a pretty solid no. So there's like my understanding at least, there's some niche use for people who use it, who for some reason cannot use opiates. And given that it is of similar strength, it can kind of fulfill that role, but there really isn't much of one beyond that.
But then it's prescribed.
Yes.
yeah, you don't go to a smoke shop.
Yeah.
Ban it.
Study out of the Mayo Clinic that just this month that's entitled kratom not safe or effective. And so that's their view. That's the view from the Mayo Clinic.
Well, it's incredibly powerful for you to be here and share your story. And
Yeah.
certainly, I think we could, I'm surprised that this legislation doesn't go further. If 7 states have banned it, why it just goes to 2%, less than 2%.
Yeah, I'd also like to add on the end of it, I can attest to that, like the withdrawal period is severe and exceedingly uncomfortable. It's in the acute phase, like 7 days of like, or like 4 to 7 days of like kind of real hell, and then several weeks afterwards of much lesser hell. And so, you know, we know people who are struggling to get off because when they get off, they immediately get seriously ill and are in pain, and it's a whole mess. So I cannot overstate like the addictive potential.
Thank you.
And then does it rewire your brain like other drugs and you still crave it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I went to a recovery facility for exactly that reason.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of wrap it up. Sorry, and could you state your name for
Oh,
us?
I'm Arlen.
Ar-
Arlen Abbey.
Arlo?
Arlen.
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 And
Thank you for
one
being here.
more comment?
Yeah, so Anna Arce, thank you for uplifting this. Yeah, I know way too many people who ended up in the hospital because of that, like because of withdrawals. And also in your research, can you add about like online sales? If possible, because I know like websites sometimes do like 30-day free deliveries and things like that. So how would you like monitor that as well?
Probably another point for state and federal
Yeah.
action. So would the committee like to, or sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in, I don't know if it's possible to support these pieces of legislation and urge them to strengthen, or do you have an appetite for that, for a full ban?
I think at the state level, they've maybe been there and backed off, but, and I mean, I don't understand all the regulatory issues that might be there, or, I mean, this is relatively new to me, but I would strongly urge the county to support legislation that regulates in appropriate ways. And a ban sounds like the right way to do it, but I don't know. There may be like exceptions for opioid, you know, people who are allergic to opioids and need pain relief. There may be things about this I don't know, but it really needs a federal action because of let's get it by mail. Direct staff to come back to the full board is what Gina's whispering here.
I think county health, they have a lot of expertise on this. And so in light of the 8-hour rule, I don't know if you all need to bring, since they're in support of it out of Ledge, or if one of our offices or together need to bring something to direct county health to implement the full, what other cities are doing, I think. So supporting the DEA and Dawn at the federal, supporting state legislation at the maximum level, and maybe even encouraging further, and then joining all those local jurisdictions that are doing outright bans. Even if there's not enforcement dollars with it now, we've got to get that ordinance language in place, I think, as soon as possible.
And I think what it does do is, until others can act, it sends a message.
Yeah, it further, that helps Sacramento.
Yeah, so I would say the purview of this committee would be for the federal and state
Yeah.
policies. And then if your offices want to pursue
Work with health.
work with county health, and we can
Okay.
on the regulatory piece for county.
On the county ban.
Correct.
You want to partner on this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we're
already
ready.
Yeah, let's do that. And
County health,
And I will
like,
get-
Muhammad is on if you'd like.
Oh, Dr. Hamami.
Dr. Hamami is there, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been listening to this, and you're absolutely right. I think it has to be a more regulation that comes from the state, because even if we can do an ordinance on the county and take some measures, the enforcement is going to be challenging. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Sacramento and we met with some of our legislators, and we demanded that the state decides who is the authority to regulate not only kratom, but also anything that's going to emerge later. Because if you guys remember a few years ago or 10 years ago, it was K2 and then it was SPICE. So these are things that are still going to come. And to limit it into the health aspect of CDPH as the authority from a health perspective does not give it teeth for reinforcement or enforcing and banning and all that. So we want a clear guideline into who is the authority to address these emerging threats and these substances. And are we allowed, if it becomes clear, would we be the inspectors plus the confiscators, the ones that can issue fines and all those? Right now, it is a very gray area that who is the entity that can intervene when they find something like that. If it is regulated similar to tobacco, then it would be different and we will take different routes. So I'm glad that we are having this conversation, but I think there are a lot of gray areas that we would like the state to clarify for us as we are moving towards that.
Dr.
Go for it.
Sorry, Dr. Mommy, Chris Henson with Supervisor Capps' office. Just internally, when we were talking about this, and I get the enforcement piece, that's always an issue. But Supervisor Capps was happy to get something to the board, ban this, and then highlight the bad actors that are selling this by showing up with media. So there are other aspects of this that we can, tools that we can use that may not be in the traditional toolbox, but
How many sellers in the county?
Yeah.
I would guess somewhere, if I had to guess, I would say 50, maybe to 80, something like that.
Go visit them.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, okay, so thank you for that. I mean, I'm all in, and I think my question is, why isn't it a ban? And I don't know if that's a question we can find out from, if our lobbyists could find out what happened in assembly when it passed assembly and it's now a Senate Health. And if there's room there to advocate for a full ban, I would like to understand it before I just say yes to the status quo. Especially if there's precedents that 7 other states have, why wouldn't California be on the forefront? Such a massive problem and to be on the forefront of health matters. So that's my question. So I think that's something we could find out, correct? From Senate Health?
Yes, Supervisor, if appropriate, I can just tell you the conversation that was had in the informational hearing last week. The MD PhD from the University of Arkansas, who I mentioned previously, was asked that very question about a ban. And there were some voices that said if you ban it, it merely pushes it to the black market, and it will also have a chilling effect on research. So just as sort of a point of context, but the question as to why the provisions related to 70H were taken out of Senator Umbert's bill, I do not know, but more than happy to make an outreach to his office and see if we can get some more details for you, and I can share those with Claire and Brittany.
And it's, I just, if we're supporting at least the bill as it stands, but we want to include other language, we often write letters that say, we like this, but we would like to see this go further.
Yeah,
And,
if you're okay.
X, Y.
We're going to get started and then just want to let you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
Interrupt us.
So the LPC's purview would be to address the state and federal issues. And then,
our offices.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And can I clarify, support the state bill, the current regulatory bill, or ask them to, or push for a ban?
Can we do both?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go further.
Yeah.
Ask them to go further, support and request.
Support and request. Yeah, and then we're gonna work on the county piece.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. That's
A local.
that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, if you could provide us a list of where it's being sold, right?
Okay.
Do we
You
know
can do that.
already?
So my guess is county health through tobacco, they have a list of every tobacco selling establishment in cities and county, right, Dr. Hamami?
That is correct.
So,
And if I may,
and maybe not 100% of them also sell it, but that could be a starter.
Yeah, I mean, at least a letter out to them, something that.
and if I may add, almost 6 weeks ago, we started a very targeted social media campaign, as well as several press releases and a lot of education materials regarding this matter.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
very helpful. Thank you.
And working with our county office of education would be important.
Okay. Yeah, so I make the motion. Do we have it? So to support this legislation and advocate for their
Second.
With the federal scheduling.
and the
Yeah.
federal.
All in favor?
Okay, so I know you have to go, I do, we can just submit it, but I have for further discussion, legislation dealing with election security and ICE. So we have several bills, or two bills. So SB 884 and SB 73.
Bring those back.
To bring those back, they're dealing with protection protection of our democracy, polling and systems, and ICE's expected presence at our polling places. So I'd like to bring those back. And then also, different topic that you all might want to hear is Assemblyman Hart's Bill 2257.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On that?
We gotta go.
24.
Yeah.
I get the right one.
Kelly, you can.
Do we need to,
Yeah.
do we vote on that or we just?
No,
No,
it's just put it out.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting is concluded. Thanks, everyone.